The Rec franchise is a Spanish-language zombie movie series. The first two movies are found footage, but the two movies after that are not, but they do have elements of found footage in them. Except for the last movie, they were all filmed in Barcelona. The franchise is truly a great one, and I've definitely watched it way too many times. That's actually how I bonded with one of my best friends. Trigger warning for racism and suicide. Rec was released in 2007, and it made about 16 times its budget. This movie was directed by Juan Balaguero and Paco Plaza. Luis A. Balaguero also assisted in writing this movie. The stars are Manuela Velasco, Ben Temple, and Javier Botet. The movie begins with a local news reporter, Angela Vidal. She does a segment for the station talking about what goes on late at night when the city is asleep. The night of the events of this movie, she is at a fire station. She has been approved to go on a call if they get one. Mostly the first part of the movie is her walking around, getting to know the firemen, getting to know how all this works. This definitely has the feeling of a feel-good segment. They don't get a call for a while, so she does some interviews and just kind of hangs out with them. It kind of makes you like them, and it'll make you feel a little bit sad when, this is a zombie movie. Angela and her cameraman Pablo run like hell to catch up with the rest when the alarm rings. They get a call from an apartment building where an older woman appears to have fallen at some point, and she's making some weird noises in her apartment. This woman is older and she lives alone. It isn't an urgent call in the sense that they aren't trying to remove people from a burning building. It's mostly just trying to stabilize the situation and, if needed, get her medical attention, which many of them are trained on anyway. When they arrive, the woman in the apartment is clearly not doing well. She is moving around in a strange way and her dress seems stained with blood. Along with the firemen, a police officer had arrived and is in the room with them. When Pablo gets the bright lights on her to get a better view of the woman, it triggers her. She is on the police officer like a rabid dog, and she is not letting go. She ends up being pulled off of him eventually, but he is badly injured. His neck is profusely bleeding, and everyone is trying to get him out to the first floor so that they can get him some medical attention. But when they get to the first floor, it becomes clear that they are not leaving. There are sirens and flashing lights coming from outside. The doors are barricaded. A man announces that they are being sealed inside of the apartment complex until it has been decided that they are safe. Someone will be coming in to assess the situation. This honestly isn't a bad way to try and contain something. We're gonna find out soon. These aren't the bad guys. They're just not helping. This pause gives us the opportunity to learn a little bit about what might be going on here. A woman begins crying about her husband being out there and that he needed to come back to give their daughter antibiotics. She's sick, and that is going to be very important later on. This girl, I believe, is one part of multiple infection points. Things get a lot more tense when a man that had stayed upstairs to deal with the older woman ends up crashing onto the ground. He is not doing well at all, so now they have two very badly injured men on their hands. At this point, as they are heading back upstairs, Angela makes it clear to Pablo that she wants him to film everything that is happening in this movie. They need everything on camera, and as far as explanation goes, that's a pretty good one, actually. They are journalists, after all. It is, their main reason for being there. They are attempting to get a better view of what is going on out there and also head out of there, hopefully. And when they look out at the window, they can see that something like an extermination tent is being put over the building. Everyone is terrified and everyone is having a hard time following instructions, even for people that are in emergency services. So to kill some time, Angela and Pablo start going around and asking the inhabitants some questions, on the off chance that they may not make it. We learn more about Jennifer and her mother, the two that were waiting for the father to arrive with medicine. She'd gotten sick sometime after her dog had bitten her. They had taken it to the vet as well, hoping to find out what was going on with the animal. There is some racism towards the Asian family that runs the textile warehouse. The grandfather of the family is sick, and everyone is running on the assumption that they are under lockdown because of him. When someone dares to point out that the daughter is sick, the mother gets heated. But this is all broken up before it can get too far when someone is finally sent in. He is wearing a hazmat suit, and he is taking a look at the injured. When he tries to treat them, they start to get violent. Angela is getting this information by spying on what's happening. The reaction to the infection depends on the blood type. That's why when the little girl she was fine up until this point, and we can assume that she's one of the first people that were infected. And, so her mother is trying to defend her daughter once again, and Jennifer bites into her face and then runs up the stairs. To stop the transformation that is going to happen to the mother, they handcuff her to the railing so that hopefully she won't be as much of a problem. And probably because Jennifer's a child, they really do go out of their way to try and save her, but the issue is definitely trying to get close enough to someone infected and get a needle in them without being bitten. The only way that they're going to be able to get out of this is if the doctor gives the go-ahead, and the doctor's just been bitten, so that's not really an option anymore. There is an older man that proposes a way out, through the textile warehouse. It has an access into the tunnels underneath the city. It's not going to be pretty, but it sounds briefly like their best option to get out of there. Until that man is killed by the doctor. They are trying to get to the apartment that has the keys for the other apartments and textiles. And when they get to that floor, the zombies start to pop out of the floors below them. And then they are chasing them higher and higher, until the top of the apartments to the penthouse. It doesn't take a whole lot of thinking to realize that this is the location that the infection actually began. So the story with how we got here is that a young Portuguese girl that went missing, she had previously claimed to be possessed. Her name was Tristana Medeiros, and the church had taken her. She carries an enzyme that results in the zombies that we see all in this movie. Any attempts to cure her had failed, so the man that lived up there had locked her away. He had hoped that she would starve to death. But she's not the only secret that the penthouse has been keeping, as there also appears to be a small children in the attic. They are so not the problem when Medeiros comes out. She is played by Javier Botet, and he is just a fantastic actor. He has such a physicality about him that is so unsettling. It's also very clear that this is no longer the body of the girl that went missing. She has been greatly mutated in the time that she has been missing. The night vision camera is excellently used. Pablo ends up being slaughtered by Medeiros, and Angela is alone as she tries crawling over to where she hopes the camera is, but she gets discovered by Medeiros and dragged into the darkness. And that is where this movie ends. This is definitely the best movie in the series. This mixture of zombies and everything else that's happening, it's good. I can completely understand why this movie would end up being remade in America. It is a terrifying movie to watch. There are some great iconic scenes, especially the last one. It also makes a lot of sense that it would have a sequel as well. 2 years later, Rec 2 was released. Once again, this movie was written and directed by Balaguerro and Plaza. The stars are Manuela Velasco, Jonathan Mellor, and Javier Botet. And while it may have taken 2 years for the movie to be released, the events of this movie take place maybe like an hour or two after the previous movie ended. It's all happening during the same night. There's some similar scenes, but they do make some attempts to try something new. It's not totally attempting to recreate the wheel, which is kind of a mixed bag. Like, yes, there are certain scenes that are pretty cool, but none of them are as cool as the previous movie. There's a special task force being sent into the apartment. The doctor, obviously, they are not getting in contact with anymore, so they want to assess the situation. They are guiding a man named Dr. Owen into the building. They, just like us, originally assumed that he is a medical doctor going in to deal with an illness. There are a lot of people outside of the apartment, so this is not a subtle thing going on at all. One of the people outside is the father of Jennifer, who is trying to get inside with the medication for his daughter. After entering the apartment building, Owen removes the gear they have been wearing and notifies the rest of them that they can remove theirs as well. Which doesn't seem particularly smart considering how many people these zombies are biting into the face and ripping their throats out, but fine, we do need to know who these people are, after all. The first location is to go to the penthouse. They don't really beat around the bush because they are assuming that the viewer has seen the first movie. While it is surprising to some of the other people with Owen, he is not surprised at all. He is very aware of what is going on. You see, he is secretly a priest and he was sent there by Rome. They are very nervous about what is happening. The assumption that they are running on is that a mosquito bit Medeiros, and then bit the dog, and then bit the older woman. The members of the task force want to go look for survivors, but Owen is not having it. An infected woman comes running towards them and is attacked by one of the men, and unlike the last movie, something can be done to stop the zombies. Owen starts reciting a prayer, which causes the zombie to freeze. They're able to shove it into a room, and he places a cross on the door. They need to do some more investigating, and he doesn't have time for that. A child that had been in the attic, and I think, there's gotta be a few of them, attacks. But it immediately goes back into the attic. Owen orders them to shoot the ceiling, and the gunfire causes a small collapse. Mostly because it appears as though there was a body up there. That is the mysterious owner of the penthouse. And it's in this mild chaos that the blood sample that is desperately needed is, broken. So, Owen's not happy about this. And he doesn't hesitate to stop from killing one of the children. He just doesn't care, especially since this really important antidote sample was destroyed. But it does lead to a bunch of zombies knowing where they are. That was a lot of noise, and the bright side is that they have some serious firepower. which is a lot more than I can say for the last movie. But I think there's only so far someone can go before a panic takes over, which unfortunately happens. The team is forced to split up. One of the men ends up in a bathroom with zombies pounding on the door. The other members are promising they'll come to get him. He ends up shooting himself in the head, which I do understand. The rest of the team wants to get the hell out of there, but Owen is the only one that can get them extracted, and he is not willing to leave without a sample from the woman. That sample is the only way that they could prevent this infection from being a much bigger issue. We will see the bloodbath that can be created if this is unchecked in the next movie. A lot more than these two. Simply because there are so many more people involved in that movie, and I will get to that momentarily. The chaos that's going on leads us to some hangout with 3 teenagers. Tito, Myri, and Ori are hanging out and trying to find out if they can send a sex doll flying with firecrackers. The answer is no. They get kicked off the roof by the police, who are trying to create a perimeter around the building. That leads to them joining a group down on the main area and watching the tactical force head inside. The group notices Jennifer's father approaching a firefighter who had been left outside from the rest of the crew. The 2 of them seemingly agree to do something, and the teenagers follow. They get into the underground tunnel so that they can break into the building through the textile manufacturing room. The teens follow after them and manage to get the attention of the police, who seem to have figured out this is a way to get out as well. They manage to get into the building before they are actually caught. Immediately, they start messing around and find a gun. They shoot it, which brings the firefighter and father back to them. The father and the firefighter are going in trying to find the answers to what's happened to people that they care about. And the teenagers are going in because it sounds like fun. The firefighter, in his anger, forces them to face the pool of blood in the lobby. They start crying, and their attitude changes from them wanting to leave very, very badly. Except they can't, because the police have welded the only exit they had access to shut. First location that they go is the father's apartment. His wife had apparently gotten there when she was released from the handcuffs. It doesn't take long at all for her to attack the husband, and he does survive, taking the medication that was meant for his daughter. I don't think that actually does anything, but it took a while for his daughter to become infected, so there's a pretty high chance that he's the person that gave her that blood type. They head to a higher part of the building and look out the windows to assess the situation. Immediately, they are warned to stay away from the windows, so it seems as though the people outside are losing faith rapidly. The firefighter doesn't listen and ends up being shot in the neck. The father books it when he sees his daughter, but there are other zombies in the area, and one of them attacks the firefighter, who is still somehow alive. Mira takes the gun, and to her credit, she is trying to shoot the zombie, but instead she shoots the firefighter. But hey, she gets him the second time. Owen and the remaining tactical force finds them. They kill the father and then Tito, who had become infected. They then lock Mira and Ori into a room to keep them safe. Ironically, this will also kill them. Not because of the zombies, but because of something else entirely. This is when we learn that Angela is actually still alive. Owen wants to know what she might have seen, as she's the last person to have seen the original zombie. And okay, I'm so tired of saying her name. I know I've butchered it. Medeiros, I apologize. I'm just going to call you an icon. There are 3 people left. Owen, Angela, and Rosso. Rosso. When they get back to the penthouse, the icon attacks Owen, Angela trying to save the idiot and get revenge on the demon for killing her friend, and also, dragging her into the darkness, shoots the icon in the head. Owen is incensed. He is so mad, and he's refusing to allow them the chance to leave. That's when Angela attacks them. Rosso tries to intervene to try and calm the situation down, and Angela kills him. She then goes over to Owen, imitating him flawlessly, and telling the people outside that there was one person that will be exiting the apartment, and that person was Angela. We see a recording that was taken when Pablo and Angela were in the house earlier in the evening. We see that some kind of slug was passed between the original zombie and Angela, showing the root of the possession has changed hands. When she leaves, she tells those outside that Owen was infected and that they're going to burn down the apartment, hence the death of the 2 teenagers. This is the 3rd best movie in my mind. Is it great? At times, but that's mostly because it's following the last movie just a little bit too close. Someone decided that there needed to be a pivot away from found footage, and honestly, it's not a bad idea. And they even go as far as to kind of change the tone of the series, which I wish they stuck with, but Plaza wrote and directed this movie. Luiso Bermejo assisted in the writing, Balaguero had absolutely nothing to do with this movie. The stars are Leticia Dolera and Diego Martin. Leticia is actually Plaza's wife, which I thought was pretty cool. This movie was released in 2012. This movie is going to start out as found footage, but it's not going to last the entire movie. Everyone is waiting for the wedding to begin. The cameras are being held by one of Caldo's cousins. Caldo is our groom, and he's the least interesting main character in this movie. The other person holding the camera is like the person they actually paid to be there. I will say that the cousin and this guy are pretty amusing together. There are only two things to really note at this part of the movie. One, that Clara is pregnant. This is only hinted at this point, but it will definitely play a part a little bit later. Two, Caldo's Tio is a veterinarian, and he was bitten by a dog while at work. This is in fact the vet that Jennifer's dog went to, so we have her point of infection. Everything is going smoothly until the reception. After the couple cut the cake with a sword, which is very cool by the way, everyone is just hanging out and having a good time. That is, until someone notices that Caldo's Tio is climbing onto the banister. And to be fair, he just looks very drunk, and he falls directly onto a table below. And, of course, some people run over immediately to help him, but then he bites one of the guests and projectile vomits blood on a few other people. No one knows what's going on, but they all panic and flee away from the mess that is happening. The newlyweds are forced to split apart. For now, we just know that Caldo ends up going with his cousin, the cameraman, and a few other people. They end up trying to escape the kitchen through the only way that they have, which is the vents. And unfortunately, the cameraman is aware that he is way too big to fit through there. He wishes them well and acts as though he's going to face the horde himself. We learn later that he does not. He chooses to take his own life versus being taken apart by zombies. And once again, I understand. After that, we're done with found footage. We do have a few scenes with security cameras in this movie and the next one, but it's over with. Caldo and his cousin find a police car. Although they are hoping to get some help, the cop is dead and there is a zombie in there. This is the first time of quite a few times that Caldo ends up almost being zombie food. But someone else ends up just absolutely annihilating this female zombie. There has to be some pent-up anger in that person. They get a lot of attention from the zombies and run like hell. That's where they find a safe zone, and I have no idea why anyone would ever leave this area for the rest of the movie. It's the church. It's where none of the zombies can go. They can make a lot of noise outside, but they cannot get in. So I have no idea why anyone would leave it. Clara is really the competent person in the relationship. She notifies him that she is safe and in a secure area with the father that had married them earlier in the evening. She believes that he is out there because they are connected, something that Caldo had said a few moments ago. She also tells him that she's pregnant before the announcement ends. Inside the church are some artifacts attributed to St. George. He is the patron saint of England, but more important to the story, he was a soldier in the Roman army that became a martyr for refusing to renounce his Christianity. Like every other saint. Caldo and another survivor ended up getting dressed in the armor. It would honestly have been a little bit cool if the armor did work against the zombies, but it doesn't. Which might also mean it's fake armor, which would also be pretty clever and a little bit funny. The other guy unfortunately doesn't last that long. He ends up being pulled away by some zombies, and Caldo is able to see the chaos that his wedding ended up being. There's zombies everywhere, the music is playing, but absolutely no one is having fun. He gets to the area that Clara and the father had already left, and he looks at some of the security cameras around the venue. He unfortunately watches helplessly as the remaining members of his family try to escape onto a bus. Not sure why they left the church, but I can understand that they did what they did because they wanted to get out of there. We then follow Clara for a little while. After being forced to evacuate the area that they had been hiding in, Clara finds a girl that she had been friends with when she was younger, and the guy that this girl had been hooking up with during the wedding. They're pretty oblivious to what is going on until zombies come running. They also come across the children's entertainer, Sponge John. He has a shotgun, so at least there's a good weapon. He's a little funny, honestly. The question as to why he's still wearing the costume comes up, and it's because he isn't wearing anything underneath, which is really his own fault. The friend and Clara have a heart-to-heart when the lights come on. Mostly, Clara apologizes for inviting her to the wedding. She wouldn't be in this situation, nor would she be dragged off by some zombies to become a snack if she hadn't been invited to the wedding. They get outside and run into Clara's mother, who has unfortunately been turned into a zombie. She has a hard time with this, as she obviously loves her mother, and her mother gets the attention of other zombies, which unfortunately killed Sponge John, and he was kind of cool, to be honest. Clara and the guy that her friend was having sex with go into the tunnels, as that seems to be the only way they could escape. They have a brief discussion down there, and he has his doubts that Caldo is still alive, as there hasn't been any signs of him for a while, and they don't know if he's still out there. In a great moment for everyone, Caldo starts playing music, which signals to them that he is still alive. So, Clara uses a chainsaw to cut off the train of her dress, so it would be easier for her to run around. But of course, things are never going to go smoothly. Not in a movie I'm reviewing. Above, Caldo is in the kitchen and ends up being attacked by his Dio. The only way that he can keep himself alive is by using a blender and shoving it into his mouth. It's actually a pretty cool death, and it just messes up his face. There's a lot of gore, and it's very entertaining. It's definitely Caldo's coolest moment, which is nowhere near as cool as Clara, as, she's just so cool. She has to climb up a ladder to get to the main surface, and the man that she had been with was killed by zombies so that she'd have a little bit more time. Not totally sure how the zombies got down there, but by this point, why are we questioning the logic? They are finally reunited, which is the moment that we have been waiting for the entire movie. But the fact remains that there are still zombies everywhere. Things aren't exactly looking good, even if they are totally prepared to fight their way out of the venue or die trying. But, for a moment, it seems as though things might be alright after all. The father starts reading from a Bible, which causes for the zombies to stop moving, which is great. So it's actually a lot easier for the couple to just walk through. We can see that the quarantine isn't in place. The plastic sheets are all over the fence. There was a police officer earlier, so maybe he was able to call out into the world before, becoming a snack, or they just tracked where the veterinarian had gone. Tragically, a member of one of their families is deaf, and his hearing aids don't seem to be working well, as he has no issue biting Clara despite the father still reading from the Bible over the announcements. In a desperate attempt to stop the infection, they cut off her arm and use a tourniquet to try and stop her from bleeding out. She's delusional and also very, very infected. That's especially obvious when she starts throwing up blood. They stand at the exit of the venue, and Caldo picks her up bridal style. He carries her through the tunnel of plastic. People are scrambling everywhere, notifying him repeatedly that she is infected and they will kill them both if he does not stop. Caldo leans in and kisses her, getting his tongue ripped off for his trouble. And honestly, he deserves it for trying to give a zombie some tongue. They're both shot and killed. But hey, at least they die together. This is the second best movie simply because they are trying something new. And I do like the humor in this movie. I also really like the character of Clara, obviously. She walked so Grace could run. If you know, you know. We have a few characters that we need to get to know. Even if there were a bunch of questions in the air, especially wondering what happened to Angela, this movie does feel a little bit soulless. This movie was directed and written by Balaguero. Manu Diaz was involved with the writing. Plaza had nothing to do with this movie. The stars are Manuela Velasco, Paco Manzanado, and Hector Colome. While this installment in the series is tonally the same as the first two movies, I can't say that it has the same care in creation. The writing is not that good, honestly. The movie opens with a rundown of what has happened in the first two movies. Then, Angela wakes up in a room that looks as though it belongs in a medical facility. This is maybe a week after. It's not long after the events of the first two movies. But the people in the room are very aware of who she is, but she does not remember why she would be there or what happened to her or anything, really. Some of her blood is taken and it confirms that she is not currently infected. I assume at this point they are trying to find the point of infection and assume that has to be one of the people that survived their experience. And we do think that Angela is the one running around with a worm, which is understandable considering we literally saw her with it. There are a few other people trapped there, and it turns out that they're on a ship in the middle of the ocean, and it seemed to be the best way to isolate the potential cause of the infection. They know that it's moved on from the original host, so they need to find a way to stop this before it gets completely out of control. The group runs to the bridge where they are talking to Captain and Nick. One is Guzman. He is a member of the tactical specialist group that was sent into the apartment. His little friend is Lucas. There's also an older woman that is very confused, thinking that she just had a really rough night at a wedding. So she is our shout out to the third movie, so we got one. Guzman makes some friends with a ship captain and a man named Nick. I'm not totally certain what Nick's official title is, but he seems to be some kind of technician. He is going through some of the footage that Angela had. He will discover where the worm was last seen, but importantly for us, Nick is a huge Angela stan. It does take a little while for things to get bad. It all reaches a boiling point when a monkey from the lowest level of the ship escapes when the power goes out. Whatever they're doing down there, he eats the power-up, which leads to brownouts, and eventually the blackout that allows the monkey to escape. The infected monkey ends up attacking the Filipino cook, infecting him. This leads to him making food that is highly contaminated and causes the infection to spread throughout the ship in record time. It's only noticed when the older woman complains about the food not agreeing with her stomach. That's not a new complaint from her, but Lucas is nice and goes back to talk to the cook. When he goes back there, it is clear that this man is a zombie. The only chance to kill him, and they have to do it, and panic erupts. Because there are a lot of zombies at this point, and while there is an attempt to cure the cook, it doesn't last that long, and to realize that things are going to go bad. As for the slug, it's been in Guzman this entire time. They discovered that the slug had been last in Angela. They also discovered that there's a full outbreak going on, and that there is no way for them to get off that ship. And unfortunately, one of the zombies is the older woman. Lucas has to take her down before she does any serious damage to them. Dr. Ricarte becomes relevant again, and he's just pretty awful. There was a few moments in this movie that made me wonder if he was actively working against the goals one would think he should have. His original plan upon coming across the group is to surgically remove the slug from Angela. He is running on the assumption that she is the last person infected, so he's suspicious that the negative test is a way to trick him. If anyone can cause a false negative test, it should be the originator of the virus. In his attempt to get her to tie her down and do the surgery, she bites him. If she is infected, he's in a lot of trouble. If she isn't infected, that means they have no idea where the parasite is. There's also the fact that he needed an unmutated strain of the virus to make a cure, which means that the one he needed was the original of the Penthouse, 2 movies ago, the one that got destroyed. The only answer for him is to hit the self-destruct button and try to get the hell out of there. When he ran into Angela in the apartment, she moved the slug into him. He's bigger, and the demon probably felt safer hanging out in him. He reveals this and has full intentions of escaping the ship and continuing this infection. From the beginning, we kind of thought that he was going to be the secondary survivor. I definitely didn't expect it to be Nick, because he's kind of a goofy nerd, but he keeps it together. When Dr. Ricarte runs into Nick, it seems as though he's going to be totally annihilated by the man. It's how one would expect for this to normally go. But no, Nick is a dedicated Angela stan, so he ends up grabbing the lifeboat after knocking the man out. And it's a good thing that Nick survived, because Angela had been chased by some zombie monkeys. It was Ricarte's way of getting rid of her. But Nick saves her, and they're more than happy to work together. The parasite in Guzman seems to realize that it's not getting off in its current form, so it really wants to get back inside of Angela and get the lifeboat that Nick has. Instead, she takes him out with a harpoon gun, which was finally a great use of the setting, to be honest. Nick throws the raft into the ocean, and there's a tense moment with the zombies coming up behind them. Angela is very scared to jump into the ocean, but Nick recognizes this as the only way to get out of there. They both do it, Nick managing to get closer to the raft than Angela, she just kind of flops in the water. But then she crawls onto the raft, and it seems as though our heroes are all good, even if we have no idea what the parasite being eaten by a fish might lead to. 27, obviously, I didn't like this movie that much. But this is a really impressive decline. I genuinely like 3 of these movies. The last one just felt kind of unnecessary. Yeah, it finished off the series, it answered questions, but did I care? Not really. There are plenty of movies that leave you wondering what you saw, what happened to certain people, and what is going to happen if this virus isn't contained. And that's okay. I love the found footage aspect of the first 2 movies. I think those are moments and techniques that should have become the standard, and in some ways I think they did. No real complaints about the acting in any of the movies, although at times the third one did end up looking kind of goofy. The horror aspects throughout all 4 movies were on point. I can't deny that much. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Amanda. This has been Horror Historian. My next movie will be Last Shift, and then after that I'm going to be doing Quarantine, which is the American remake, kind of this series. It gets a little weird, and I will get into it. But thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me on Ko-fi, I guess. I give up trying to tell people to go to my Twitter. I don't use it enough.